as we go from topic to topic, you know, you never know when that, you know, when we're going to start all of a sudden just recording what we're saying. So the conversation's going on, and next thing you know, we're capturing it, and you know, we may go ahead and publish it, we may not. So as we resonate with that authenticity and that context of mastery and how the master comes into the dojo with humility, I really honor that. Again, back to our kindred spirits, you know, that we're in this space because we kind of come at this ideal of communication with a level of humility, I think, right?
Helena, what have you been noticing in terms of, well, let's say with business leaders or women in business, and what sort of complaints or challenges that you're hearing, you know, from the grapevine or from your connections or networks, and how do you feel that you're here to contribute to helping?
Wow. Yeah. Well, when people really come to me, what they're talking about is trying to figure out how to build more connections and find their people. And what we end up looking at is, and this is so interesting because this is right off the back of a conversation that I just had with a group of clients where they were reflecting on how they came into the program, because what we're really doing is translating ourselves to this digital world. And when we show up and say, like, if there's a, you know, a little lady downstairs who needs our help with her groceries, and we show up and we say, hey, let me help you, I mean, that translates perfectly. But when we come online and we try to say, hey, I want to help you, you guys have gotten those messages before and those don't translate. But what's so interesting is how that translation is so much more natural than we think. So the issue that I'm really dealing with and I'm hearing about from people in my network is how to do that, how to translate that help first message into this digital world when right now nobody really wants to. I mean, there's so much noise out there. How do we break through that noise? And going back to this group of clients where everything that they were saying after they're through the program was exactly what they were saying at the beginning, because it is about who we are and it's about harnessing that. And so when we talk about something as tactical as like looking at somebody's LinkedIn profile, they start saying, at the beginning, we're saying, yeah, you know, there was just a vibe. I just had a gut feeling. I was interested in their business. And now they're having conversations with other business owners on LinkedIn and they're saying the exact same thing. That's what's fueling these conversations. And it's so easy to forget that because we're going from this tactical approach of what everybody else is doing around us and falling into that and tripping over it because we're trying to figure out the tactics before we've asked ourselves the questions. What are you interested in? What do you want? What do you give? Just what you asked me, you know, what am I seeing? All of that, I think that it's these questions that really fuel and power us.
And then also the authentic human connection to each other as well as to ourselves as we strive to answer the questions, right? Yeah. And that's one thing is like, you know, when a question's posed, you know, we can elect as human beings with free will to not answer the question. One of the things I like about this space is that the questions have got kind of an intention and an implication of stretching and trying to answer a question we may not know the answer to. And it's back to that implication, I think, of uncertainty in today's world that, you know, people want to know something. We all want to know, right? So as we exemplify, you know, I love the ideal of how questioning is, the questions are the answers is a cliche. That's what Socrates used to say, right? And by asking ourselves questions that we may not know the answers to, it may not feel comfortable to not know, but I get the impression that as we harness who we are, you know, and with an essence of humility, I get the impression that's kind of a new way of doing business, whether it be through social media or otherwise. And it's interesting as I say that, it doesn't really feel comfortable because it doesn't fit the consensus paradigm that's been sculpted in our society over the past, you know, decades and years, you know. So just exemplifying that and challenging more people to come into that space of possibilities and questioning and being that example of, you know, white belt humility as a master in the dojo, you know?
I think it's important that the quality of our questions, though, you know, being able to ask really good questions is important, and not just any old question, you know. But the quality of the question can really guide the process, you know. For the most part, you know, it really allows the other person to really to ponder and can really inspire the solution from them, you know, from us by asking really good questions. And that's, it's just, you know, serves as an initiator type of thing, just as a spark plug for the other. So I think it's really important that, you know, how we ask questions, that we how well we listen as well, to be able to ask good questions. It's another important quality in the business environment, or in any environment really. But since we're talking about business here, you know, yeah.
The quality of listening, I want to draw us to that a little bit, because the power of good questions is so important, and that's contingent upon our listening. And I don't quite know how this fits into it, but when I was living in Japan, I asked myself this question that might not sound like a good question. I was driving for 30 minutes every day to go teach, and I lived in the middle of nowhere. There was just a river, and there was a bunch of bridges in between my apartment and the school. So I asked myself the question, how many bridges are there? And how many tunnels are there? Because we were also going through mountains. And what is so simple, like the question showed something about the place that I was in, and I think that that's what fueled the question. But the product of counting those bridges, which seems like just a boring thing, what's going to come of that, meant that I looked at my surroundings so differently and noticed things that I never would have noticed, except I was trying to count these bridges, which then led me to notice the guy who always walked his dog at this time of day, and the woman who was trying to catch the bus at this time of day. And mind you, this is really in the middle of nowhere, so there wasn't a whole lot going on besides these bridges. And what those bridges then led me to was feeling so much more connected to this place. And maybe that's what this loops all back into what we're talking about here, of how our questions can connect us in ways that we have absolutely no idea when we ask them. And not even questions just to other people, but to ourselves, in terms of, what would you guys go out and ask yourselves some really mundane question, or that we think is mundane in this moment right now, and you ask yourself that question for the next week, then what do you bring back?
I think that's a good challenge for all of us for the next week, is, you know, condition ourselves to ask questions of ourselves, right? And see what comes back from it, right? Let's do that.